Hi, friends. Tracy here to tell you that making a podcast is hard work. There's research, scripts, editing, and all of that can mean a million decisions. Fortunately for me, my choice in a podcast hosting platform was easy because I decided upon Anchor by Spotify. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started on your podcast today. Welcome to Crescent City Crime, dear listeners. I'm Tracy.
And I'm Brian.
And thank you to everybody who has kept listening to us throughout all this time, and welcome back. And if you are new here, then just welcome. And if you are new, then this is our monthly coffee talk episode wherein we kind of take a break from the crime and the mayhem of New Orleans, true crime, and just focus on other things. Usually we have an interesting historical topic, but since it is Brian's birthday month and we are coming at you on this lovely September evening because we have a cool front right now and it's very exciting.
Yes, we do. It's quite nice. It's nice to walk in this nice, cool breeze.
I know.
It's it's not too warm. It's not too cold. It's just right. It's the type of weather you just love to vacation in, or even just sit outside on a chair and relax.
I saw this very funny meme that said that summertime left like it owed somebody money.
It did seem abrupt, but that's fine by me.
Yeah, it's fine by me too. And of course, as New Orleanians, our thoughts are with people in Florida right now who are facing Hurricane Ian. Please, Floridians, stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe. Charge up any device you have that can keep phones and radios charged. In addition to chargers, little portable chargers, we always like to have at least one booster box fully charged at hand. For that purpose, or if nothing other, if you have to jumpstart your car.
Yes, if you have to jumpstart your car to leave after the hurricane, which you and I have done that once or twice. In our experience with hurricanes, yes, it is just a little bit more dangerous, but we've stayed during a hurricane and left after.
Yes, we have. We did that. That was Hurricane Ida.
And Hurricane Isaac, too.
Remember that?
Yeah.
That's definitely no picnic. Probably the worst part was when we overheard that tornado that was on the most people would call a median. We call it a neutral ground.
And this was during Hurricane Ida. It was right after. And I remember when I had said, "Hey, I think the storm's ending because I can feel my ears popping. The pressure is changing."
Yeah.
It was right after I said that we heard the tornado, and of course we couldn't see it. We couldn't see anything. All the lights were just out. And that's the crazy thing, that if you live in a city, you don't really think about how dark it is without the street lights, without the house lights and whatnot.
No, not until they're out.
Yes.
And then you get a view of the sky that's similar to the view of the sky I had in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait at nighttime in the desert out in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. Well, I wasn't there, but I believe it. I mean, when I've gone out to the country, you could see more of the stars at night than we can in the backyard here at our house.
Yes, but always my view of the stars has never been more clear than standing guard duty in the middle of a compound during light discipline, which means no external lights whatsoever. You don't want to reveal your position to any possible enemies, so it's very dark outside and the sky is very clear.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I did forget to mention that because this is Brian's birthday month, we are letting him commandeer the mic, and he's going to tell us a couple of stories about his life on this Coffee Talk episode. Brian, are you ready to share some of your life experiences with the members of the audience?
Sure. I'm going to start off with an early one. Okay. These stories are going to be like chronological order. My beginning experience with school wasn't exactly the best or welcoming, as basically ages 1 to 4, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother while mom would be at work and dad, well, someplace else with his new wife. And my first experience, it was like this summer preschool at this place called Kindercastle, where I was very untrusting of the staff there. And I decided to try to stay away from them as much as possible. And I was over there, I was hanging out with I guess it was the bad kids of Kindercastle, in a way.
Bad 4-year-olds?
Yeah, we didn't want to play any organized games, anything like that.
Okay.
Instead, we decided to pretend like we were, in our minds, garbage men. And we commandeered one of those little play gym type of things.
Okay.
And pretended it was a garbage truck and we were doing a garbage route while everyone else was playing touch football or softball, kickball.
But you know, being a garbage man or a sanitation worker, as the correct term is a very important job. If there are any sanitation workers listening to this, thank you so much. You really do an important job.
It's a job that, ironically, though, let's say you'll spend time in school reading about one author and literary works, when the truth be told, sanitation workers have a job that's much more important than any author.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
no.
Yes. Sanitation workers prevent disease.
They do, but authors introduce ideas to people. And there are probably even authors out there who've introduced the idea that sanitation workers are important people.
That's probably true. But without sanitation workers, lots of people would be dead.
I know.
Yes, and that would be fewer people to read books in the first place. So, but for us, it seemed that was us being rebellious, okay? Because I guess we were that small group of kids that decide that we were already tired of being told what we needed to be when we grow up. Like, oh, well, you should try to become an astronaut, or you should try to become a nuclear physicist, or you should be a doctor, you should be a veterinarian, and so on. So, we had been we were that small group of kids that was just kind of tired of being bombarded with that. So we decided, we want to be garbage men and just be defiant, In fact, and that had carried me on into elementary school. Like I remember, I believe it was in 4th grade in Miss Alexander's class when. Of course, at that point, you have one teacher teaching you all subjects. And it was a round table. Well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, of course, there were kids saying all kinds of stuff. And, listeners, you know the kind of stuff they were saying. It was always these big jobs that required lots of education. Or, of course, astronauts in there. And the odds of anyone becoming an astronaut are, no pun intended, astronomical. Okay,
right?
Because you essentially have to be something of a scientist yourself and a problem solver who is in outstanding physical condition, and even a pilot. Okay, let's say if you're one of the greatest pilots in the United States military and you're a great problem solver, then you don't need to know as much science. as say the mission specialist. You see, but the odds of any child reaching such levels is pretty remote. I
I
mean,
also think that you might have to take that track very early on, like probably from elementary school. You have to know that that's what you probably want to do, and you have to start studying that math and physics and all those things that's required to become an astronaut, so you can get into the best education program that would help you continue that track, best college.
Yeah, plus
all that.
You'd want to be the golden boy athlete, brilliant in science and math, and you're a great athlete, and you participate in extracurricular activities to develop your leadership.
Right.
On top of all of that, and if you want to be, say, a mission pilot, then you try to become a pilot in the military, of course. So, but anyway, so the funny thing is, of course, when kids say they want to be an astronaut, they don't think about all that stuff. They obviously don't know. So when it was my turn, I raised my hand and said, "Miss Alexander, I want to be a garbage man."
But you've never been a garbage man, right? Like, you've never had a sanitation worker job, have you?
No. I mean, having to pick up garbage in the Marine Corps doesn't count. Standing in a skirmish line with other Marines and walking forward and picking up every piece of trash you see in the area, which is called, police calling the area. Okay. That doesn't really count. No, not really. Now, the other story I want to talk about that early school is kindergarten. Okay. Now, I didn't like going to Kindercastle. Very untrustworthy of the staff there. Never ate at Kindercastle because I didn't trust the food.
Oh.
And there was that time when one of the faculty asked me why I didn't want to eat, and like the, I was giving this very frank answer, like a kid is going to give, of course. A little 4-year-old that is just going to tell you what's on their mind. I said, well, it might be poisoned.
It might be poisoned. You thought, why? Now, okay, hold on though, because I gotta ask, because I've heard this story before. Why did you not look at the other kids eating and think that their food was poisoned too, or do you think it was just your food was going to be poisoned?
I think I thought that someone might be out to get me for some bizarre reason.
At 4 years old?
Yeah, because I felt all alone there.
Oh, okay.
I felt vulnerable, so that probably contributed to that paranoia. And I didn't quite fit in with most of the kids. I was, as I said earlier, I was hanging out with
the rebellious 4-year-olds.
With the rebellious and defiant ones who just didn't want to conform to what the other kids were doing.
Right.
But in this case, the first day of kindergarten, and this was a private school that had, for the lower grades, for kindergarten through, I believe, 6th grade, they had traditional schoolhouses. And each schoolhouse was separated from one another by a chain link fence with a yard to play in and swing sets, stuff like that. So, and each schoolhouse was essentially maybe two rooms: teacher's office and the classroom, which had the teacher's desk, of course, and a bathroom. And they had those old floor heaters.
Okay.
So they were schoolhouses that were built to be schoolhouses.
Right.
Quite literally. So I believe I had seen at the time, I had probably already seen too many episodes of Hogan's Heroes, which at 5 years old, of course I really didn't understand what was going on. I just knew that, this was about World War II, which of course I really didn't have much of any understanding of what World War II was at 5 years old. I just knew that I played with little toy M4 Patton tanks. Sherman. Yeah, Sherman tanks. And little toy German Leopard tanks fighting each other, and the German toy soldiers and the American toy soldiers, of course. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, nice, as I'm enjoying this television show involving war and POW camp. And I'm really not liking this day in kindergarten. So Miss Lindbergh puts us down to take our naps. And I tell myself, I have to get out of here.
Oh, no.
And then so I wait until I think the coast is clear. Miss Lindbergh goes in her office because, my eyes are actually open, just peering around. And I get up and I tippy-toe past everyone else who's napping.
No.
Yeah. All I have is this plan to try to escape, okay?
Okay.
Kind of like the escape from the Death Star. I had a plan I didn't have a plan for getting out, really, once I left the classroom. So I get to the door and I managed to open the door. And guess what happens next?
You got busted, didn't you?
Yes. Miss Lindbergh grabbed me and, without even so much as closing the door, immediately smacked me on the behind.
Oh.
Then closed the door. So one hand on me, the hand she slapped me with, she closed the door. And then put me on the mat. And that was my first and last attempt at escaping from kindergarten.
Oh. Okay, so your school career was off just swimmingly, right? Like you decided to be a rebellious 4-year-old and pretend like you're a garbage man and say that you wanted to be a garbage man, and then you said the food might be poisoned, and then you tried to escape from kindergarten.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Was that your first day of kindergarten when you tried to escape?
That was the very first day of kindergarten. And I think what made it most memorable was the fact that I got spanked for this escape attempt, you see. And not to get into a big discussion of corporal punishment for children in the home, okay, but it really was the most succinct way to explain to me as a 5-year-old that there were consequences for doing something I was not supposed to do. Trying to escape from the kindergarten classroom and then go God knows where.
Right.
Because I didn't know the way home from there.
Right, that's true. You didn't.
This school was off of Robert E. Lee Boulevard.
Which is now called Allen Toussaint Boulevard.
Yeah, Allen Toussaint Boulevard, which close to West End, not far from the lakefront, okay?
Yeah, and that's, I know where you used to live. I know where you grew up. That's a ways away.
Yes, and I did not know how to get there. Something terrible could have happened to me if I'd attempted to walk, and I didn't even know my way either. Yeah, that would not have been good at all. No.
So your plan was just to get out of there and nothing beyond that.
Nothing beyond that. No. As a 5-year-old, I wasn't thinking that far. I wasn't that good a chess player at the time, I imagine, because I was only thinking one move in advance.
It's almost like when a child says they want to run away from home, and your parents are like, okay, better take all these canned goods with you. So, they pack the little suitcase to make it too heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that, where the child just thinks, I'm going to run away from home, but they don't really think about what comes after that.
Right. There's no plan for getting a sustained force supply of rations.
Water. Shelter. New clothes.
Right.
Or clean clothes, rather.
Yeah.
A place to sleep.
Yeah. Facilities to use.
To stay clean and go to the bathroom, yes.
Yeah, there's no plan for that at
There's
all.
no plan for that. No.
Nope. You're just going to run away. You're just going to escape. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to take a brief stop here to hear from our sponsors, and we will be right back. And when we return, Brian will hopefully have some more stories that are just as humorous from his. What are you going to talk about next? Your teenagehood?
Next, I'm going to go into high school when I was with Civil Air. When I was a Civil Air Patrol cadet.
All right, cool. Okay, well, we will be right back. And we are back. Brian, please continue.
Okay. Now, my interest in military subject matter, of course, which began very likely around 3 years old, of course, continued on into high school and manifested itself in my participation as a cadet in the Civil Air Patrol, which is an auxiliary of the United States Air Force, whose primary mission is to look for, locate and rescue downed civilian pilots of small aircraft, which is accomplished by, patrolling the air to look for wreckage, using an emergency locator transmitter to find a black box, and ground teams, which is where trained cadets can come in as well, with the little Elper, ELT emergency locator transmitter device, to basically scan from 3 points and triangulate using a map the crash location, and then you go to that location and you hopefully find the wreckage and possibly someone who survived and needs first aid, because the ground crews, including cadets, are trained in first aid, radio communications, that type of stuff, using the emergency locator transmitter. A very worthwhile activity for a high school student.
Yes.
Practicing these SARS, search and rescue missions, would typically, when I was a cadet, it would be at this small airfield, and usually in Jennings, Louisiana. We'd go by bus and we would camp out on the grounds of the airport in tents, practice bivouacking, and they would plant fake debris somewhere in a black box, and it would be our mission to find it.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes they'd have simulated wounded, and we'd do simulated first aid. Learn some good stuff, practicing all this stuff. In the meantime, we'd meet on a Sunday at the Lakefront Airport in our Air Force uniforms that had Civil Air Patrol in Sydney, or CAP for short.
Right.
Okay. Whereas there's Civil Air Patrol in all 50 states, and each state has its unique wing patch. As the Civil Air Patrol squadrons in each state is joins together to form what's called a wing.
Right.
Okay. So, Louisiana, it would be you'd have the Pelican.
Of course.
For the Louisiana wing patch would be a Pelican. Okay,
yes, for those who don't know, the Pelican is the Louisiana state bird.
Yeah. So it would be on the shoulder, it would be flying in the opposite direction where you're facing.
Right.
Never forget the time. It was a member of the Marine Corps Reserve who was a Civil Air Patrol senior member, who sewed his patch on the wrong sleeve.
Oh.
And jokingly said, at least my bird's flying in the right direction.
Did they make him change it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, of course. He had to set an example for the cadets.
Right. Yeah, of course he did, yeah.
That was like my first contact of someone who was like currently in the Marine Corps. Never forget the time. It was during one of these search and rescue type of, practice SARS, when he looked at me and he said, "You're too tense. Relax." And I'm looking at him confused, and I'm thinking, I'm supposed to just make myself relaxed on command.
Right.
It's in a military type of environment, or or quasi-military type environment. It just didn't seem natural to me.
Well, it also seems like, from what I understand about that intense military training, the Marine Corps, the Navy SEALs, they don't. I know the Navy SEAL camp in particular is infamous for that week where you don't really get any sleep at all.
Yeah, they call it Hell Week.
Yeah, they kind of make you do this, kind of like a battle sleep almost, not like a full 8 hours of rest that one would typically enjoy.
And strangely enough, the first 72 hours of boot camp, you don't get any sleep because you're constantly going from station to station.
For Marine Corps boot camp.
Yeah, filling out paperwork, getting medications, getting issued uniforms, receiving instructions. A lot of stuff you have to get done in the first 72 hours, and there's no sleep in that time period. So, getting back to Civil Air Patrol, you're in the Air Force style uniforms. You're taught to drill in the Air Force way, which some minor differences between the way you drill in the Marine Corps and the Air Force, but I'm grateful to Civil Air Patrol to this day because I was taught how to drill before I got to Marine Corps boot camp. Plenty enough to learn in Marine Corps boot camp. For me having to learn how to drill in Marine Corps boot camp, it would have been more difficult for me had I not already known this. Also, had I not only known manual of arms, which is, military drill with a rifle, and Civil Air Patrol, yeah, they were your toy rifles, in essence,
right.
But the movements and the executions were identical to Marine Corps close order drill with a rifle. So that was helpful as well. Very worthwhile activity. And, we would we'd have certain classes throughout the year. Like one time we made our own gliders using these little model planes using toothpicks and this type of crate paper, I think, to wrap around the toothpick wings we made. And, but the story I'm getting to involves model rocketry, because in Civil Air Patrol you can earn yourself a model rocketry badge, which strangely enough is deliberately made to resemble the Air Force Missile Launch Officer badge. Okay. Which is given if you've fully learned all and tested, out of all the procedures, everything you need to know to become a missile launch officer, which is big during the Cold War era. ROTC cadets and Air Force Academy cadets, that was one of the things they tried to push on officers officer candidates not qualified to fly, usually because of vision, saying, well, you could have a good career as a missile launch officer. So, for Civil Air Patrol cadets, I think the truth be told about this model rocketry class and launching the model rockets, it was probably a backdoor recruiting to get us to want to be missile launch officers, which never really wanted to do that. Never didn't want to just sit in a missile launch silo, just sitting there with another officer for hours on end. So, getting the model rocketry class, we take the class and everything, and we build our model rockets and we decorate them in a manner in which we want. Mine, I painted olive drab and used, I was trying to mimic the Army's Honest John battlefield missile, which is probably 1960s era.
Okay.
Probably. So that's how I did mine. The thing about a model rocket is that its payload is the parachute itself, which will, cushion its landing, slow down its landing so that you could reuse your model rocket. The solid fuel propelled engine, okay, which were single use. Okay, you'd buy them in packs, depending on the size of the rocket, you'd buy them in packs of 2s or 3s. And there was a way of properly securing it inside the bottom, okay? which is very important because once your model rocket launches, you want the solid fuel booster to remain in there, because when it burns its way to the top,
Okay.
that's a small charge that propels the parachute. Okay. And the nose to come loose, the parachute to deploy. So then your rocket safely falls to a landing. Okay. Now this is an important detail getting to this story. Okay.
Okay.
Enter Cadet Staff Sergeant Eric Schneller. Proud of his German heritage. That's an important detail as well. Okay. Schneller means faster in German.
Oh, okay.
So she wouldn't let us forget that. Of course, okay. Eric Schneller, very proud of his German heritage.
Did he just stand there and yell at you, Steller, 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 over and over again?
He was sorry he did that because we did it to him later on, and we never let him forget it. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So now I was doing very well in the model rocketry class, so I got appointed. Most of us were given, some of us were given job duties. I was appointed safety officer. Okay.
Okay.
So my job as safety officer was to inspect everyone's model rocket, make sure the fins were properly secured, okay, because you want guidance. You want this thing to actually go straight into the air.
Right.
Okay, before the parachute deploys. And, open it up and make sure the parachute is folded properly and that the strings securing it to the model rocket are all done properly and everything. And most of all, make sure that the solid fuel booster engine is properly secured as well. Because if that thing falls out, your parachute's not going to deploy. Okay? So everyone's rockets are fine except for Eric Schneller. Okay?
Okay.
So I inspect Eric Schneller's rocket, and his rocket engine's loose.
Okay.
Okay? And I tell him, I said, you need to secure this more properly because you're just going to turn this thing into a ballistic missile.
Oh.
And your parachute's not going to deploy. And it's going to come down and maybe break into a million pieces. And so then he gives me a hard time about this. And I said, Schneller, if you don't properly secure this engine, your rocket, I'm not going to clear you to launch it. And I smiled at him, and he gave me this look like I was on some power trip. No, I wasn't. I was just doing my job
right.
as safety officer. Okay.
Okay.
So what does he do? He goes over my head. He goes to Captain Donald Moore, who was the
instructor.
Well, he actually wasn't the instructor for the class, but he was the senior member who was in charge of Clary Lee Chenault Cadet Squadron at the lakefront.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He was an excellent guide, great role model, really outstanding American in general. Okay. Former Air Force, he was an Air Force veteran. Okay. It's just something nice he did on the weekends, of course, and it was very good. Very positive influence on all of his cadets, including myself. And I guess he decides he made the decision that if Schneller wanted to risk the structural integrity of his model rocket, fine. Okay.
Right.
He goes ahead and lets him launch it. And I'm thinking, okay, I did my job, So, he launches it. Okay.
Okay.
And keep in mind that this area is around where there are some supply warehouses next to the airport. Okay, it's not really close to any of the taxiways or the runways, the airfields, the hangars.
Okay.
And you got this asphalt road that runs between. It's like 10% asphalt road, 90% grass.
Right.
Plenty of soft places for this thing to land, okay? Well, his model rocket takes a U-shaped trajectory like a ballistic missile, okay?
Like you said it would.
Like I said it would, because the engine did not stay
in
place long enough to deploy to burn to the parachute deployment stage. Okay. And where does it land?
Oh.
Take a guess where it lands. And you have all this grass, but what does it land on?
Does it land on the road?
It lands on the asphalt road.
Oh.
Breaks into a million pieces. Okay.
Okay.
And Eric Sneller looks, and he's the only cadet, and he just busts out laughing. I'm shaking my head and rolling my eyes.
Yeah.
Thinking, no, yes, yeah. Don't listen to me. Doing my job. I know what I'm doing. I'm the best in this class. Okay.
Okay.
I did the best model rocket and everything. I really knew what I was doing. All that stuff. And didn't listen to me. And he turns to me and laughs. And I said, yes, Sneller, that, like I told you it would. It looked just like a ballistic missile with a perfect U-shaped trajectory. And what did Eric Sneller, so proud of his German heritage, tell me? Okay, and this is when a bunch of us laughed, but I kind of went bug-eyed.
Okay,
and looked at him.
What did he say?
He said, like a V2 over England.
Oh, Schneller.
Yeah, yes, I went bug-eyed, and I just shook my head, and I'm like, really? Okay.
He sounds like he was a bit of a jerk.
Yeah, he was actually kind of an elitist.
Mm.
No, he was he for high school he went to Jesuits. Okay.
Oh, that is a Catholic high school out here in New Orleans. It's an all boys school, right?
Yeah, you have to have money to send your kid to Jesuits. It's rather expensive, or work 2 jobs to send your kid there. Okay, it is a good all Catholic all boys school, but because it's a bunch of young men wearing khaki uniforms to go to school. Some of them are a little elitist,
right?
And so it appeared Jesuits was kind of making Eric Sneller into somewhat of an elitist. But I'm sure he did fine. He ended up joining the Marine Corps just like I did.
Oh, were you in the Marines with him?
No, but I know he joined the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And before I left Civil Air Patrol, he kind of told me that he, not in so many words, respected my decision to join the Marine Corps instead of the Air Force, and told me he was doing the same thing.
Okay, so all's well that ends well in that case.
Yeah, all's well that ends well is a hilarious story. One of the things we laugh at.
Well,
years later.
Wouldn't it be funny if Schneller was listening to this episode, or somebody who knew him? So if anybody knows Schneller, or if you are Schneller, hi, we're talking about you.
Yeah. Hope you had a good career in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Mine was okay. And speaking of the Marine Corps, we're getting to the not so funny story tonight. It is, at this point, it's still Operation Desert Shield. Desert Storm hasn't quite begun yet. We're still staging. We're several miles away from Kuwait's border with Saudi Arabia. We're getting supplies together and even engaging in training. We're rehearsing movement and convoy as well. We're spending time doing that. And everyone has their weapons. Everyone's got live rounds.
Okay.
Because we were anticipating possible dangers. Theoretically, we could have been attacked, especially because no one knew at the time whether or not Saddam Hussein was going to invade Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Next, okay, that was always a possibility. And I'm in one of the big general purpose tents. The casual television viewer may have seen on every episode of MASH. Okay, those big tents. They're called GP tents, general purpose tents. Lots of room in them. Every tent can sleep at least. Every one of those tents can sleep at least a platoon.
And how many are in a platoon?
about 36 in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
Maybe, okay, 37 including the platoon leader, I believe. Yeah.
And are these beds, like, are they stacked in bunks or all spread out singular or what?
Go with bunks.
Yeah,
just
bunks,
a little, just a little. Well, like the cots, actually cots. These lightweight cots with aluminum legs and let's see, like I think canvas material. Okay, to sleep on. Some platoons have 49. Some platoons have 49 Marines. But anyway, so I'm sitting on a cot. Now this tent is also the supply tent. So I'm sitting on a cot and I'm writing a letter, and I hear the crack of an M16 single shot.
Oh.
Or what I believe to be an M16. It's a high-powered rifle round. And I hear an impact on one of the crates.
Oh.
Inside the supply tent. It's a crate that was storing batteries for communications platoon, comm platoon. Batteries for radios. We're not talking D batteries. We're talking, larger batteries for military radios.
Yes, I know what you're talking about exactly. I do.
Right. So my first reaction is to duck down, and I'm thinking it could be a sniper taking pot shots at us. So I grabbed my flak jacket, which already had the H harness with my combat load of 6 magazines, 30 rounds per magazine, 180 rounds plus the magazine inserted into my M16. Okay, so I roll into the flak jacket and I Velcro it shut, and then I grab the helmet.
Oh.
And put it on my head, and then I grab the M16 and I chamber around, and then I low crawl. Keeping the M16 off the sand. Cradle them arms and do a quiet low crawl towards the opening in the tent. And for some bizarre reason, Sergeant Thomas is in the tent. And Sergeant Thomas is just frozen, standing there, like, what the hell is happening?
Right.
Whereas I'm reacting, I'm feeling very paranoid here. So I low crawl to the end of the tent and I start looking around. And there were some Marines who were literally in holes with their shelter halves over. 2 Marines paired off in a hole that they dug in.
Okay.
With the 2 shelter halves put together to form one little shelter, also called as a pup tent. Okay. And I noticed there is a very big rip through one of the shelter halves, very big. And then I see the first sergeant reach into the hole and pull an M16 out the hole. And then he says, "Get out of that hole, both of you."
Oh.
And then I'm thinking, well, okay, explicitives, okay?
Right.
Explicitives, okay? MF, whatever, all this stuff, okay? The Marine in that hole had an accidental discharge.
Oh, okay.
And it turns out the 5.56 millimeter bullet, the crate that it hit, was 20 degrees. Let's see, my back was towards the crate. Okay. The impact of the crate was 20 degrees to the left of my chest.
Oh, okay. So
that chest level, because I was able to find where the bullet impacted.
Okay, so it was close.
Yeah, it was close. He goes, let's see. His rifle's 20 degrees to the right instead. 20 degrees more to the right.
Then you would have been...
That's my chest. And I'm not even wearing a flak jacket. Not that would have stopped. Not that particular flak jacket would have stopped a 5.56 round.
Oh.
At that time. This is 1990.
Right.
Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and say his name is PFC Spriggans.
Yeah. Okay. Shame on you, Spriggans.
Yeah, who earns the nickname from that. He earned the nickname the Rifleman.
Oh boy.
And yeah, that was based upon the TV show The Rifleman, that nickname.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
So, of course, for me, it was a traumatic occasion. It's one of the reasons why I don't appreciate firecrackers.
Yeah.
And what happened after that? The first sergeant who took the rifle from Spriggans and marched him to the commanding officer's tent, to the command tent. Okay.
Okay.
He told me not to talk to Spriggans, not to have any conversations with him. And while my anger against him boiled in the days after this, I obeyed the order and just didn't talk to him. And then he didn't talk to me. He never so much as apologized to me.
Shame on you, Spriggans.
And he was getting the proverbial crap details. Okay. They were finding crappy jobs to give him to punish him for that. For quite some time, they took his ammunition away.
Oh,
they had him walking around with a rifle with no rounds, because he was still responsible for the rifle. Okay,
right.
And he was the only Marine in my unit who received NJP while we were over there, non-judicial punishment, also known as Article 14, which, of course, is the equivalent of municipal court, a misdemeanor in the United States military, where your commanding officer plays the role of judge, a corporal or above, NCO or staff NCO, is your accuser and presents evidence and testimony to the captain. And you're not allowed to have a lawyer. You simply state your case,
right.
Or you can just simply put yourself on the mercy of the commanding officer.
Okay.
Another word for this is called office hours. Captains on a ship, a naval ship, it's going to be called captain's mast.
Okay.
And the captain of the ship is going to be the conductor of this. So it is relatively serious. It can set you back on promotions if you have an Article 15 conviction. Okay, even though it's a misdemeanor, fortunately, it's not felony. So naturally, Spriggans was found guilty for his NJP, his non-judicial punishment hearing, and he was punished pretty much the maximum. Forfeiture of 1 month's pay. Demotion from private first class, PFC for short, to private, which for pay grade that's demoted from E2 to E1. And I think he was fined $500 in addition to the forfeiture of that month's pay.
Oh, okay.
In addition, and plus the crap details he was given. And he had such a bad attitude about it after that.
Okay, so
he actually got out the Marine Corps as a private.
After like a full stint, like 4 years?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, so I don't mean to cut you off here, but we do need to take a break. So we're going to do that right now, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up, and you're going to tell one last story, right?
Sure.
Okay. All right, and we are back. And Brian, did you have anything else to add to that story that you were just telling us?
Yes, come to think of it, some people hearing the story, especially military veterans, might have been wondering, well, PFC Spriggans, what do you have to say for yourself? How did this happen? Okay. And he concocted this little story that he was checking to make sure that his M16 would chamber around when he pulls the charging handle. Okay.
Okay.
And then it just went off.
Oh, okay.
Any Marine can tell you, and many people who served in the Army can tell you this as well, that the M16 and its variants, they fire from the closed bolt,
Okay.
which means they do not slam fire. Okay.
Okay.
He tried to say it was a slam fire. Okay. Just only a knucklehead would just concoct a story like that. Just by comparison, the old M60 Marine Corps Echo 2 version, or E2, fired from the open bolt, which means if there's a malfunctioning part in an M60 involving the bolt, okay, if something's broken in the bolt, it can slam fire.
Okay.
You see, but an M16, no, that just doesn't happen. It just won't fire in the same instance.
Well, also a gun just generally won't go off unless you're actually pulling the trigger.
That's the majority of your accidental discharges, is accidentally pulling the trigger with a chamber, with a round in the chamber. Okay, so
yes, everybody practice your trigger discipline, please.
Yes, with a firearm, never put your finger on the trigger unless you actually want to shoot. Okay,
right?
Unless you're actually like, and it's something you practice. I mean, I even do that on a shooting range. Okay, right. It's pointed down range safely at a target, and then my finger touches the trigger. But anyway, so the armory. Okay, now yes, I had buddies in the armory. Okay, at one point we were playing Dungeons and Dragons in the sand. I was playing a Dungeons and Dragons campaign with members of the armory at one point, which we never finished. Of course, we didn't finish it, because we were in a war, So the story I got was they tried everything to attempt to make it discharge accidentally. And of course, every armory has what's called a clearing barrel, or a clearing. Since we're in the sand, they dug a clearing hole, which meant clearing around from the chamber, check to do what PFC Spriggans was trying to do, check reliability. You safely point it into a hole or a barrel.
Right. Okay. So in other words, this clearing range, or clearing hole in this case,
clearing hole
is a place that you can go to safely discharge a weapon, where it's not going to hit anybody or any supplies.
If that's necessary, but usually what that means is to get unchamber the round,
right,
and then to finish the the safety check, you pull the trigger on an empty chamber to, quote, clear it.
Okay,
something like that. You see, so they did everything they could to make it go off, and the only thing they could do to make it go off was pull the trigger.
I see.
You see, so the armory debunked his story. They knew he was full of it, and he made himself look even worse. Instead of just simply saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't intend. I forgot there was a round in the chamber, and I pulled the trigger."
So he
would have been more respected if he would have said that. But
so
no, he lied. He tried to lie.
Got in more trouble because he tried to cover it up.
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay.
The Marine Corps pushes for accountability, okay, integrity, accountability, integrity, readiness, okay.
Right.
Those three things are huge in the Marine Corps. Generally, a Marine is a good Marine if they are accountable, they have integrity, and they're ready. Okay. And I guess for PFC Spriggans, 1 out of 3 wasn't bad. I think he was just simply ready,
Okay.
Accountability. Forget the accountability and forget the integrity. Spriggans didn't have either one of those.
Yeah. Shame on you, Spriggans, you liar.
Yeah. Shame on you, and shame on you for getting out of the Marines as a private. That's really bad. That's really, really bad.
So is that essentially a way that you can fail the Marine Corps? Like it's a class, like you flunked out of the
That's a failed career in the Marine Corps
career.
if you get out of the Marine Corps as a private, unless it's a medical discharge.
Right.
Early in your career, okay? Unless it's something that isn't your fault. But if you do your 4 years in the Marine, you come out of private, something's wrong. You screwed up badly. You failed to get any promotions, or better yet, you got demoted, just like PFC Spriggans did.
Well, that was I have heard that story before, but I don't think you ever quite told me the whole thing from end to end like that. I don't think you told me about the armory guys doing their job like that, and
inspecting his rifle.
The rifle, yeah.
Yeah. Which that was one reason why he didn't have his rifle for a while. The armorer is obligated to inspect it, and then they gave it back to him. And for a while, he didn't have rounds. He didn't have rounds until he had to have them. Sometime before we crossed the berm, when it became, sometime after it became Desert Storm, which of course the operation transitioned from Desert Shield to Desert Storm. When the first airstrikes on Baghdad in Iraq, went down.
Right.
So that's when it changed to Operation Desert Storm.
Okay. And what else did you want to talk? I mean, was that all for that story, or did you have?
Well, I have a comical story from the sands of Saudi Arabia where this is like a month and a half, something like a month and a half after we are, after it's over with, after Desert Storm's over. And at this point, we're no longer babysitting this hill south of Kuwait City, which we were for a while for security reasons. Come to think, I think this is 2 months after. Okay. So at this point, we're back in the rear. What was known as Camp 15, a camp that was constructed for the express purpose of receiving Marines and getting them ready to move out, essentially. It was like a little makeshift town, believe it or not, that was set up, and it even had a Baskin Robbins with 6 flavors of ice cream.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't 31 flavors, it was 6. And we were lucky to have it, but that was just that was like maybe 2 weeks.
Right.
We got there that we had access to that Baskin Robbins and a proper chow hall at Camp 15. So we're back at Camp 15 again. Hooray, back at Camp 15 again. I wasn't one of the lucky ones who got to sleep in a barracks at Camp 15. I was in a camp that was set up about a mile out of Camp 15, sleeping in a GP tent again. No big deal. I mean, I was just glad that the thing was over with, and it was just time to get stuff ready to go home. Some stuff we were leaving, some stuff we were cleaning to bring it back. It was important to clean certain equipment so that we didn't bring sandfly eggs or home.
Right.
Because the problem is, you'd have breeds of sandflies that had the potential to devastate American agriculture.
That's an invasive species, yeah.
Yes. So, and there was some stuff that we left. Okay, like we didn't bring back any field jackets.
Okay.
We decided we were just leaving them because we didn't want to risk sandfly eggs that way.
Right.
And we actually, but we washed the camis though.
Okay.
They had us wash our clothing in a barracks. Okay, right, like 48 hours before we left, we got to stay in a barracks and watch stuff. So prior to all this, there was lots of movement of vehicles, of course.
Of course.
Some Marines would just march to Camp 15 from our encampment, march that mile to go eat at the chow hall, which we had that privilege at that time. We got to eat in the chow hall again at Camp 15. And some of the lucky people, even in motor transport, had a barracks, which meant you could have a hot shower every night.
Right.
For most of my time there, I wasn't able to shower at all.
Anyway.
So this guy in Motor T, he decided that he didn't want to walk to Camp 15. So what does he do? He talks me into driving him there. Well, actually, the deal was, since he was in Motor T, he knew he could get away with being the driver. Okay, so I'm the passenger. I pretend like I'm the passenger. And he drives to Camp 15. And the plan is, once he gets to the barracks and gets his gear, we switch places. I become the driver, and I just casually drive it back to Motor T and just quietly, just park it as far away from the Motor T chief's eyes as possible.
Okay.
Okay, because this is the unauthorized use of a military vehicle. And, park it far away as we can get away with it, and just casually walk away.
Okay.
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 Pretend like nothing's happened, And I'm not feeling the most comfortable about this request.
Okay.
Because what happened at formation that morning, bright and early at 0800, the supply chief, who was a captain, Captain Kauer, I believe spelled Kauer, German name, Kauer. Okay.
Okay.
Not spelled a K, not a C. Okay.
Right.
Gave the entire unit, all the platoons, a very stern lecture about unauthorized use of Humvees. Our Humvee, the vehicle that replaced the Jeep.
Okay.
It had been in use since, I believe, the 1970s.
Okay, so let's review a little bit. That morning at formation, Captain Kauer said nobody unauthorized can drive a Hummer or a Humvee, right? And somebody from the motor pool asked you to just drive this Humvee, even though you weren't authorized to do so. And you
drive it back to Motor T after he gets to the barracks and gets his gear and goes to the barracks, and I just casually drive the Hummer back to Motor T, pretend like nothing happened, try not to attract any attention.
Okay.
And you see, because what happens now, the unit itself kind of set this situation up from the get-go. Why? Because of all the things we trained to do, and we trained extensively as extensively as we could before getting over there. And we did a lot of training in the sand.
Okay.
Well, not everybody was given their Humvee classes and tested for their Humvee licenses. But a lot of us were granted what was called in our battalion the Southwest Asia license. Now, Southwest Asia is the part of the Asian continent where you have the Middle East. Okay, Southeast Asia is Vietnam, Korea, those countries. Okay,
okay.
So we have what was called the Southwest Asia driver's license.
Oh,
meaning, okay, the Humvees don't have keys. That's another thing about a Humvee. Okay, they don't have keys. They have a switch.
Okay.
You turn it. You turn it in the first click, and that starts the battery. Okay.
Okay.
You wait a second or two, and then you turn it further, and then that's the ignition. Okay. So you have every Humvee. Yes, it has a steering wheel lock that you can apply to it. Okay.
Okay.
But out there in the sand, okay, you can't worry about losing the keys to a Humvee or not having them. You just jump in and drive.
Okay.
Because it's, combat situations.
Of course,
okay.
yes. But there's a practicality involved with that.
Yeah. And practicality just triggered something, a practical joke that's played on Marines who are not in Motor T, would have occasion to drive a Hummer. Okay.
I bet I can guess, but go ahead.
Okay. Someone sends you to the Motor T chief to request the keys for a certain Hummer that's parked someplace.
Okay.
This practical joke is typically played on Marines who are new.
Okay, of course.
It's your first day in the unit. and they play that on you, and the motor chief picks up on it and even goes along with it and tells you, so and so in training has the key to that Hummer, so go ask him.
Right.
And then if that officer's in on it, then guess what? You get sent in a wild goose chase all over the place, looking for the keys to a Humvee that does not need them because you've never driven a Humvee before. Okay. All right. So we get this stern lecture saying, Captain Collar saying, Southwest, as of right now, Southwest Asia driver's license are canceled.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want to run into another Marine who does not have a Humvee license, or even worse, doesn't have a trip ticket for the Humvee, meaning you have not been approved to take that Humvee.
Right.
Okay, for that day. Okay. So, yeah, you're required to have a trip ticket, okay? Which is written authorization, okay? So, things are going well, okay? We make it, we're engaging in small talk, and we're driving the speed limit. We're doing 20 miles an hour, okay? Because military police are out patrolling, all that stuff. Fortunately, we didn't see any. And, he gets out and gets his gear, and he says, okay, Smith, you got it from here? And I said, yep, no problem. And I nervously get in the driver's seat, pull off, doing my 20 miles an hour. Things are going fine so far. And guess who I see walking from Camp 15, walking back to the encampment? Guess who I see walking?
Was it the captain?
It was Captain Collar himself.
Okay.
And here becomes the dilemma. What do I do here? Do I keep driving forward and play it off and hope that he doesn't see me driving this Hummer? Okay, because I worked directly with Captain Collar several times, and he knew I didn't have a Humvee license.
Right.
So I wouldn't have a trip ticket in the first place at that point for that vehicle. Or do I slow down and stop and say, good evening, sir. Do you need a ride?
Okay.
And see what happens, okay? Can you guess which one I did?
Oh, I am going to guess that you decided to call his bluff and you offered him a ride.
I most certainly did. Okay. And I'm nervous, of course. I'm thinking, oh boy, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, because of this. I'm caught dead to rights here. Okay.
Yeah.
And then so what happens? He turns, he looks, and he says, "Oh, Smith. Oh, yeah. Good evening. Yeah, thanks, Smith." And then he gets in. He just casually gets in. And then we're driving the rest of the way for Camp 15, of course, once again, limiting the speed to 20 miles an hour, okay, which is typical military standard, okay, under ordinary circumstances. So, and I'm sitting there nervous. I'm not saying anything.
Yeah. And
he's not saying anything either. And so this is feeling awkward, okay, of course.
Right.
And then I'm thinking, okay, stay calm, stay cool. Drive him to the supply tent. Drop him off there. So, and I said, "Oh, you going to the supply tent, sir?" And he said, "Yes, that's correct." And stopped at the supply tent. He just casually gets out and he says, "Thanks, Smith," and walks right off like nothing happened. Okay.
Wow.
And then I casually drive to the Motor T area and quietly just, I shut it off and quietly get out and walk away. And then I'm asking myself, am I going to hear about this later on?
Did you hear about it later on?
Strangely enough, no.
Okay.
Good. So it's funny. It's like, in retrospect, this encounter of seeing Captain Carr walk and stopping and offering him a ride with a smile on my face, it was kind of reminiscent of some of the stuff, the comedy that would go down from an episode of MASH.
Right, yeah.
Where, like in the situation, I'm You got Frank Burns.
Okay.
Let's say Captain Collar was reminding me of Frank Burns that day.
Okay.
And I'm Alan Alda's character.
I see.
You know, trying to get away with something, you know. And the awkwardness of, you know, being seen by Major Burns, you know. It had that vibe to it, you know.
Well, that was that was very funny. It's a story that I had heard a couple of times before, but I don't think, again, there was more details in this telling than other tellings, and I really love that. I love how you have told a couple of stories that I've heard before, because, I mean, look, we've been together for a long time, dear listeners, me and Brian. We've been together for, like, pretty much forever. We're an old fart married couple. So if you have somebody in your life who can retell a story and give more detail to it, and at another time you hear it, then that's a good thing.
Oh yeah, that's kind of where being a little anal retentive with details can actually entertain someone.
That's true. And dear listeners, we really hope that you're entertained by a couple of Brian's tales from the course of his life. We really hope that you enjoyed this Coffee Talk episode. And Brian, thank you so much for sharing parts of your life with the listeners.
It really was fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Brian, you know, for the next episode, it is going to be October.
Ah, yes, our favorite month.
Yes, it is. Well, my birthday month is also a pretty nice month too, but we'll get there. However, yes, October means a lot of things to a lot of people, but for me, it means the days get shorter, the nights get longer, and things get just a little spookier.
And it's cooler.
Well, the weather is cooler.
Yes. That's, of course, one of my favorite things about October.
Yes, mine too. But in that grand tradition of October, on this podcast next month, we're going to be telling stories that are a little bit darker, a little bit grimmer. And of course, we're going to have a couple of ghost stories as well. We're going to be bringing you extra content for the month of October. And in next week's episode, we are going to start that by discussing a I would not say he's a widely known serial killer, because it's one of those things that I had to dig for information on. But we do hope that you will join us and listen to that episode and see what we're going to talk about.
Oh, yes. Please join us. We love to tell these stories. We have a good time, and we appreciate you listening to them.
Yes, we really do appreciate you, dear listeners, very, very much. And we also appreciate word of mouth. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, especially tell your enemies.
Definitely tell your enemies.
Definitely tell your enemies. Rate and review us. Make sure that you subscribe to us so you don't miss any episodes. And until next time, be safe, be kind. Remember that we're all human beings, and don't park next to vans.
If it's dark, seems dangerous, you don't feel safe, don't be there in the first place. That way you won't have to actually justify use of force if you're not there to begin with. And if you are talking to law enforcement in an official capacity and not the victim or the witness to a crime, lawyer up.